This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. We try each day to bring you great guests from the business world, from the private equity world, and more. We try and make sure that you're learning something, we're learning something. You're with us today on the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. Podcast this week is ranked number 2 out of all Apple Business News podcasts. So we're thrilled to see our listeners engaging. Thank you very, very much. We're thrilled today to be with Dr. Darryl Williams, who's the CEO and founder of Partnership Solutions known as Partsol. They're one of the leaders in the AI business before there was even an AI business. We're going to talk to Darryl today about what pain points they're trying to solve for customers, what niches they work in, what they're most excited about this year, and a lot more. Dr. Williams, can you take a moment and introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about the development of Partnership Solutions known as Partsol?
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott. As previously stated, I'm the founder and CEO and even the chief scientist of Partsol. It was a company that I created back in 2007. It was specifically looking at supply chain and supply chain assurance, with the idea that everything in the world is indelibly linked to a supply chain. We could talk about things like moving a widget from point A to point B, but in reality, everything is. A virus has a supply chain, an attack, a cyber attack has a supply chain, an individual has a supply chain. And once you're able to map those with a certain level of fidelity, then you're able to actually conduct predictive analytics. And so Partsol was specifically created to nurture and to grow these supply chain algorithms with the desire of helping businesses that are engaged in existential issues. Now, when I created this back in 2007, I had no way to even begin to understand that there would be something called COVID. And so when COVID hit, and all the global supply chains unraveled at the same time, I was confronted with the opportunity to move from a boutique company to a multinational global company by applying true artificial intelligence to these algorithms. And we did, and the rest is history.
Thank you. And talk a little bit about the specific pain points, the problems that you're trying to solve for customers. And then we'll talk about the categories of those customers. Who is the core type of customer? But talk for a second about the specific pain point you're trying to solve for customers and why, quite frankly, you're so good at it. Can you take a moment to tell us that?
Sure. So originally, the pain point was fidelity and depth. Most individuals only know their supply chains maybe 2 levels. They might know who their sub is, but they really don't know who their sub is. And so when it comes to supply chain, cost of units sold, efficiencies, only knowing 2 levels limits a company. And so that was the original pain point that these algorithms were designed to handle. That is the depth and the breadth of a supply chain with impeccable accuracy. Once COVID hit, and we then applied artificial intelligence to these algorithms, we realized that we had a third dynamic, and that is speed. And so our pain points that we are addressing right now is accuracy and speed. Accuracy, because that's an existential problem. If you are trying to reconstruct a supply chain, or if you're in a legal firm and you're trying to make a deposition and you are 90% accurate, your reputation as a law firm is going to collapse, and that becomes existential. Speed, because if you're turning away customers because you cannot address them fast enough, then you're watching revenue run out the window. In the case of banking, which we'll talk about in a minute if we get to that area of particular niches, know your customer. The typical multinational bank takes about 5 weeks to conduct a know your customer on a high net worth individual. These type of individuals don't like to wait 5 weeks. Right now, we are deeper than anyone else in existence, and it takes us between 15 and 35 minutes to conduct the same Know Your Customer. So accuracy and speed is a niche that we have complete control over.
That's amazing. And that is critical. So talk about your core niches you work with and maybe an example of what you do for those customers in those niches.
Sure. So we have discovered that there are four basic niches or verticals where accuracy and speed are existential. There are other verticals and niches where you want to have accuracy, but if your accuracy is say 98%, then okay, you can live with it. But there's four of them where 100% accuracy must be 100% of the time. That, of course, is government with national security. You cannot operate in a 90% accurate range and expect your country and your services to exist. Banking. Banking is completely predominantly governed by lack of vulnerability in the system. If all of a sudden you're finding out that you're letting someone get a loan with Know Your Customer that should be getting one, all that we have to do is look at FTX in the Bahamas. It could collapse a whole industry. So accuracy and speed, legal. We have found situations with customers coming to us that are in the legal field where they have used generative AI to help prepare legal briefs. And as the judge is reading through the brief, he's finding that the generative AI is actually creating case law. That is not a way to endear yourself to that particular judge. And the last thing is healthcare. If you're going to a remote type of surgery and you're about to go under the knife and they come up to you and say, we're going to be doing remote surgery, and we have about an 80% accuracy rate between the doctor and the robot that's doing it, nobody in existence would go under the knife. So those are the four verticals that we are focusing all of our attention on at this point is the government, banking, legal, and healthcare.
Thank you. And give us an example of where you're working closely with a customer and a use case in this that's working for you, working for them. Give us an example of a use case or two, if that's okay.
Sure. So for the legal, the whole idea of legal is speed of discovery. In the case of a high dollar patent infringement case, which I can't go into the actual customer, that particular Fortune 50 company was under a lawsuit. Well, now you're talking about rooms full of data where the very nature or the very success of that case could be predicated on where is the comma in a sentence. Right now, the present way of doing it is that legal firm has to go out and hire scores of associates to manually read through all of that information. They can't turn it over to generative AI because of a 90% error at best. With our system, we were able to ingest all of that data and come up with that particular situation, and it resulted in the one of the largest pre-verdict settlements in a particular state's history. And what we were able to do in a matter of a day or two, they would still be reading through all of that evidence. In the case of banking, it's to know your customer. It is an individual, two situations. Both are Fortune 50 banks. One bank turned away an extremely high net worth individual because their credit came back bad. We were asked to take a look at it. We found that that lady's credit was actually very good. The problem with every other tool is that it took five people with her name, put them all together into one person, and said that she was bad. Another instance was an individual that everyone said was good, and we found that it was an individual under sanctions, under criminal indictment that was let go because they were able to hide themselves in global flows of data. So accuracy and speed are critical.
Fascinating. And all of us have been through with the banks the know your customer type of rule, or even with these new fintech payment solutions. And it is amazing how slow and difficult some of them to work through versus
Yes.
others. It's really, truly amazing. We stopped using one vendor, so it was hard to get through with, and went back to using on one particular business, PayPal versus Wave, just because we had a hard time getting through the know your customer types of rules. And really simply amazing that this day and age is so challenging. It-
Correct.
Take a moment on how could customers work with you? How do they reach Partsol? Where can they find you and so forth, Dr. Williams?
Probably the best way at this point. Our software, our production software, will be released on the 31st of March. Now we're already being used by scores of Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies. We already are standing up an office in Dublin, Ireland, with customers also in Portugal and the Bahamas and UAE and others. So we are releasing our beta. The best way right now is to go through our website. There is a contact sheet there. Just go ahead and put your stuff there, and you will immediately be connected with one of our sales or technicians that will help to start the process moving.
Thank you very, very much. And talk about the release you've got coming up in March and also about what you're most excited about this year, Dr. Williams.
Yeah, the release in March is our software is called a tie. It sounds pretty cool being an individual that used to do a lot of gaming, but a tie is actually an acronym for Absolute Truth AI. It is the it is the epitome of the next generation AI that is 100% accurate 100% of the time. It gets released commercially for the legal verticals, the banking verticals, the healthcare verticals, and the government verticals on the 31st of March. That is not going to be the end state for development, because development is going to continue to move forward to make things even faster and more expansive. But the thing really that's making me excited now is that we're finally getting to the point in AI where we have cut through all of the euphoria and now are starting to ask the hard questions. I mean, everyone is enraptured by an open AI that has a $150 billion valuation. We have a Meta, we have, even in the Chinese, we have Baidu, and all of them have been just soaring on all of this AI hype. Well, now the hype is starting to peak, and these with huge valuations are looking and seeing that they haven't monetized anything. So now the really hard questions are being asked. How accurate is it? And how fast is it? And when they start asking questions like that, it's all about solution versus size and hype. So that gives opportunities for companies the size of Partsol to leapfrog ahead of the bigs and actually start showing solution without cutting through all this hype.
In a lot of ways, a lot easier to work with a mid-sized or small firm and getting from point A to point B, as long as that small firm or mid-sized firm like yours has the goods. Just a lot easier to get
Correct.
going and talk to a person versus getting stuck in sort of, the incredible customer service problems that you get at some of the large companies where they're trying to do everything in a certain way.
You're absolutely correct, Scott. And that's what we're seeing. We've tried and we have succeeded in entering the markets in the United States, but the United States is so saturated with AI hype. It is very, very difficult for a company like Partsol, that's a mid-sized company. So we're finding that there are actually countries, the Bahamas, Portugal, Ireland, many of them that are not of the GDP of the United States, that are tired of these massive behemoths coming in and selling them goods that don't work. They want to partner with a mid-sized company that will grow as they grow. And so we're finding better success actually overseas, especially now that we can structure ourselves and be certified under the data laws with GDPR. And then whiplashes back into the United States. It's a shame to be able to say that, but in reality, the United States is saturated right now with AI hype, whereas the smaller countries are needing the solution, not the hype.
I mean, that's literally an amazing perspective. Uh, Dr. Williams, as always, I want to thank you for joining us on the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. It's brilliant what you're doing. Thank you for joining us. And again, thank you to our listeners. I know ranked, I think, second today out of all the Apple Business News podcast. Thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. Again, Dr. Darryl Williams, scientist, CEO, founder at Partsol Partnership Solutions, known as Partsol, just a magnificent leader with magnificent AI solutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott.